All right, today we are jumping into a pretty epic story about a huge cosmic struggle for control of our world. It's this incredible narrative about authority that was given, then tragically lost, and then won back through a brilliant strategic plan.
So let's just dive right in with the biggest question of all. Who is really in charge here? You know, the answer might seem obvious, but according to the text we're breaking down, it's way more complex and honestly more surprising than you might think.
To really get our heads around the answer, we have to go way back to the very beginning, to look at the original blueprint for our world. What was the plan from the get-go?
The core idea here is something called vicarious rule. Now, I know that sounds a little technical, but just think of it like being a manager or a steward. The text explains that humanity, starting with the first man, Adam, was basically appointed as the manager of planet Earth, given full authority to govern on behalf of the ultimate owner.
And in that original state, what was the world like? Well, it was a place of perfect harmony. The text describes a reality that is just completely alien to us now. A world with no violence, no fear. The law of the land wasn't survival of the fittest. It was just peaceful coexistence.
This quote from the source really just nails that vision of peace, doesn't it? And the key here is that this wasn't supposed to be some small little garden somewhere. No, this was the model for the entire planet, meant to be governed peacefully through humanity, acting as its caretakers.
But, as you can probably guess, this perfect setup didn't last. The source describes what was essentially a hostile takeover, a cosmic coup, where the legal rulership of the world was actually stolen.
So how on earth could that happen? Well, the text argues it was a kind of legal transaction, one that was started by deception. The manager, Adam, was tricked by this rebellious being, Satan. And by breaking the one condition of his leadership, Adam legally forfeited his authority. He basically handed over the deed to the planet. And the fallout from that transfer was just catastrophic. It's like a virus corrupted the entire operating system of the world. It went from a kingdom of peace to one ruled by violence and the law of the jungle, a world of decay and death, where the very ground itself was cursed. And get this, the source makes a pretty staggering claim. This entire global shift, this plunge into corruption and suffering that affects every single part of creation, it all hinged on one single act of failure. Just one. Okay, so how in the world do you fix a disaster on that scale? Well, this is where the story gets really, really interesting. The plan to turn it all around isn't about brute force. It's framed as this brilliant strategic reversal. So, a new hero steps onto the scene. The text calls him the Son, or the last Adam, and his mission is incredibly precise. Confront the illegitimate ruler on his own turf, on legal grounds, and win back the authority that was handed over. To explain this amazing reversal, the source uses this powerful analogy from the ancient story of Esther. It's a perfect picture of a villain getting caught in his own trap, where the very weapon he builds for his victim becomes the instrument of his own downfall. So, let's just walk through how this plays out. In the story, the villain, Haman, builds this huge gallows to get rid of his enemy, Mordecai. That's his master plan. But then, plot twist, the queen steps in and exposes the whole scheme to the king. And the result is just stunning. The king orders Haman to be executed on the very gallows he himself had built. The trap he set became his own.
And that, right there, is the punchline. The source makes the case that this is exactly what happened at the cross. What looked like the enemy's greatest victory, the death of the rightful heir, was actually the spring-loaded mechanism of the trap. It's argued that this act of execution was turned into the very legal maneuver that disarmed the illegitimate ruler and sealed his judgment.
So you end up with this incredible contrast, right? The first Adam, he fails the test, loses his authority, and brings death into the world. But the last Adam faces the test, overcomes it, legally reclaims that authority, and brings the promise of life back to the table. So, the victory's been won. What happens now? Let's move to the final act, restoring the kingdom. How does this win actually change the future of our world? Well, according to the source, this victory wasn't just symbolic. It had real cosmic consequences. The legal right to rule the world has been reclaimed. The curse that caused all this decay is broken, opening up the path for all of creation to finally be restored. And, the biggest one of all, death itself, the ultimate consequence, is defeated. This timeline here kind of gives us the roadmap from that victory all the way to full restoration. It all kicks off at the cross, where the usurper is judged and defeated.
Then the victory is proven for all to see through the resurrection. This leads to a final judgment, where that illegitimate rule is formally, permanently ended. And that clears the way for the grand finale, a renewed heaven and a renewed earth, fully restored to its original purpose.
And the ultimate goal of this entire cosmic plan? It's a complete return to that original blueprint. It's a world where all the consequences of that stolen rulership, all the suffering, the decay, the pain, and death are just gone, wiped away forever.
And this leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. If the world of violence, chaos, and decay that we see now is, according to this text, the result of a broken, stolen authority, just try to imagine. What would a world operating fully under its rightful, benevolent ruler actually look like? That's the question this source really wants us to think about.